Hi everyone, it's Denise. Welcome back to Dobby Books. It's been a couple of weeks, and I'll just have you know that this particular recording right here and now is my third attempt. The first time my hair kept rubbing against my microphone and it was annoying. You're hearing the background. I had to delete that one. Second, I did great. Everything was peachy, and I played back the video and there was no sound. So this is my third and last try. If I don't make it today, I'm just going to save it for another day. So here we go. I did a lot in the last 2 weeks. So what I've done is I keep my timeline. I have a timeline. I bought this book. It's an art sketchbook that I got at Michael's. And I've filled out this much, starting with ancient history, up until today. So right now I am just finishing up Charlemagne, moving forward from there. So I have this much left. I haven't shown a lot of the pages. Here was the beginning. And just other things that I've done with my timeline as I'm working my way through my chronological studies. Sometimes I was able to glue a map onto there and color in some items. Sometimes the map got very, very busy. The timeline would get really busy, such as here. Here's an example. I would have maps here and all these different, this covers, like I was trying to cover the time of the Roman monarchy, and I put a line here and everything that happened during the time of the Roman monarchy. And then, oh gosh, this is just, sometimes I have a really pretty, lovely 2-page spread, which continues on here. And other times it starts to look really boring, like it does here. I only have this much going on. I have no illustrations or anything to glue on yet, but this is where I'm at. 742 to 814, Charlemagne. I'm almost at the end of my book, so I'm very happy. Let me show you what I finished reading. So I read the Confession of St. Patrick and the Epistle to the Soldiers of Coroticus, St. Patrick of Ireland. It's a brief memoir from Patrick, the Confession of St. Patrick, nothing like the one from St. Augustine. Patrick talks about where he was born and his family, briefly about his upbringing, and then how he was captured and enslaved by the Irish, taken to the island there, and then his eventual escape, came back home. He eventually was baptized, and then he later followed his vocation to the priesthood, and then his call to become a missionary to those in Ireland. And his gratitude, his thoughts, his feelings about all that. This is something you could definitely read through in one sitting. This is something that I see assigned to middle grade students in classical schools when they're studying early Middle Ages. And the Epistle to the Soldiers of Coroticus was St. Patrick writing a direct letter to the soldiers of Coroticus, their leader. I think Coroticus was a pagan leader in Ireland, beseeching them on behalf of the Christians that they had the habit of capturing and selling off into slavery, as well as reprimanding them for doing what they were doing to Christians. So that's the Confession of St. Patrick and the Epistle to the Soldiers of Coroticus. And then the next one I read, so let me see, this I believe is 450 AD. And then the next one I read is from 675 to 749 AD, and this is St. John of Damascus. He was one of the fathers of the church on the Eastern Church at the time. The church at the time was still one. The schism hadn't happened yet. And this is from a series entitled The Fathers of the Church. This is volume 37. It has a whole series on the early church fathers, apostolic fathers, church fathers. There's a couple of categories I'm forgetting there. And I didn't read the whole thing. It's a lot. This is called the Fount of Knowledge. This is another word for his writings. And I covered a few parts of the philosophy section where it explains the different philosophies. I also went into the section that's entitled The Orthodox Faith, which covers several topics on the traditional Orthodox beliefs of Christianity. And then I stopped. So it'll end up getting a little yellow sticker on there rather than a green one. This one has the yellow one as well because I didn't read the last part, the tripartite life in there. Then the next one I read, which goes from 742 to 814 AD, were the two lives of Charlemagne, because this is when Charlemagne lived in that time period. The first author was a monk. He was writing from a Christian perspective about Charlemagne, who he was as a Christian. And the second one was written by, I believe, someone who worked in Charlemagne's inner circle. And this gentleman wrote more from Charlemagne the king. As you read both sides, you see how they overlap, but you get the fuller picture, the man, the king, the man, the Christian, and you can put the two together. And I liked how it had those two perspectives in there. And this was what? Oh, and from this, I'm going to show you one of the books I'm going to read that's related to Charlemagne. Now, the next book that I finished was for October. It was my favorite book that I read in October. There were a lot of good ones, spooky ones I read, but this one really did it for me. And this is the one entitled The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. He is a Canadian author, and the story is set on the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. And here's this town that was sort of fading, and here's this dorky kid named Jake who gets kind of bullied by the other kids, and he eventually makes friends with another kid who is a Native American. I think he has the name Bear in his name. I'm not remembering quite what it was, but let's say Bear. And Bear has an older sister, about 14 years old. I think Jake is like 11. And her name is Dove Yellowbird, and she's a Spitfire. She is free-spirited, full of energy. She is unafraid. That girl just has the world in the palm of her hands. And Jake is absolutely smitten with this girl. And in some ways, Jake's uncle, who the story opens with, Jake's uncle is also a free spirit. And he loves his uncle so much because his uncle was always able to just reach down to his level and just really connect with him. But Jake also learns that part of his uncle's strange behavior is related to something that he experienced in his life. And he learns about what that is much later on in the story. So it starts to make sense to all of us in the end. But that uncle, I would have to say, after I learned all this, I thought, here's a brave man. Here is a brave and loving man. So it was wonderful that this character was created by the author. I loved it. There was one excerpt in here that I want to read to you, because here's Jake, this 11-year-old kid, just head over heels in love with Dove Yellowbird, but he doesn't understand it all. He's still just a kid, and this girl just has him wrapped around her pinky finger, and he doesn't even know that. He's not even aware of that, but you can see, from our grown-up perspective, that this poor kid's a goner. And it's just kind of beautiful to see because there's an innocence about it. And throughout the whole story, as Jake will talk about Dove and what she does and what's going through his mind and what he's feeling inside, and he can't quite place it. And in this one section that I'm going to read to you, it's like he finally finds the words to describe it. And here it is. It's just fantastic. Imagine trying to hold the tail of a comet as it blazes across the heavens. It's burning your hands, eating you up, but there's no malice in it. A comet can't possibly know or care about you. You will sacrifice all you are or ever will be for the comet because it suffuses every inch of your skin with a sweet itch you cannot scratch. And through its grace, you discover velocities you never dreamed possible. You will love that comet, but part of that love, a percentage impossible to calibrate, is tied to your inability to understand it. How can that comet burn as it does, pursue the trajectory it does? It confuses you because the comet disguises itself as a human girl. But make no mistake, The girl contains fire to evaporate oceans, light to blind minor gods. If I could freeze her in the heartbeat where she skipped across the footbridge, carve her out of time and fix her in the firmament, in the deepest chambers of my heart, I know that nobody, not another soul on earth, will ever be as purely astonishing as Dove Yellowbird was in that moment. And I was just, it stopped me. This is one of those passages that you find yourself needing to just stop and soak it in and to try to capture as much of its richness as you possibly can. And the silence that follows, it was just fantastic. I loved this story. Again, The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. Now, I want to show you the books I'm going to be reading. The first one is The Song of Roland. And the reason I chose this is because when Charlemagne was on one of his military expeditions in order to fight the Muslims, he was in Spain, and on his way back, the tail end of the huge entourage of military men was ambushed by the Basque natives in the area, and they were just slaughtered. And the Song of Roland is a romanticized retelling of that massacre that's just so well known. I've heard of the Song of Roland, right? And it's supposed to mean something. Now I know why it was written and the story behind it, so I might as well read it and become familiar with it. But because it's poetry, which is not my strength, I thought maybe I should listen to it on Audible and then follow along in the book. But the problem is, all the Audible versions were in different translations than the one that I have. Mine is a translation by Simon Gaunt and Karen Pratt, and this is an Oxford World's Classics edition. And since I couldn't find the same translation, I finally gave up and said, just read it. Do your best and just read it. So I am reading The Song of Roland. And I had a collection of narrative histories, and I was just collecting them and thinking, oh, this would be a great thing to read. Oh, this would be a great thing to read, which is what I normally do. But I have such a vast collection that when it came time for me to pick another thing to read for my Middle Ages study, I want to do a lot of primary sources and then a narrative history, secondary source thing. My emphasis is primary sources. But when I tried to pick one of the secondary, narrative histories here, it was impossible. Look at this. I'll show you. It's crazy. If I can even hold it up. Look at this. It's this huge pile, and there's just, it was crazy. So what I decided to do, pick one and base it on something you would be really interested in. So going along those lines, I finally realized that what I always love to do is when I find, for example, a novel, I find the original. If I love to find that same novel written in other formats, let's say for middle schools, or a YA version or a graphic novel version. This is what I love to do. So instead of anything from this pile, I ended up picking this one out, which is The Book of the Middle Ages by Dorothy Mills, and this is a republication by Memoria Press. So this is what classical schools will assign to middle schoolers who are studying the Middle Ages. So it's a format that I'm interested in reading about. Has lovely little basic illustrations, but I just love how it's just putting it together for younger readers. So this is the one that I'm going to read along with this. These are my next two Middle Ages studies. And of course, I'll be updating my timeline as I go along. And finally, a third thing. No, that's it. So last but not least, almost, are 1, 2, 3 books that I got. So that's a book haul. The first one is from, these are two books that will be added to my Middle Ages studies. And these, one will be, this is like the High Middle Ages, and this one is about midway through. Yeah. So this is one by Anselm of Canterbury, Cur Deus, oh, Cur Deus Homo, Why the God Man. This is a well-known and significant, what would I call it, treatise by a well-known theologian, St. Anselm. I believe he was a bishop. I don't know. I'll find out as I read it. This is a publication by Ex Fontibus Company. And let's see what I'm up for. I'm looking at the writing and thinking, oh boy, what am I going to do? But I'll let you know as I work my way through. So the time period on this one is 1094 to 1098, which is around the time that this was written by St. Anselm. And then the next one that will be behind that one is by St. Ignatius of Loyola, The Spiritual Exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. This is very well known in the Catholic Church. I don't know about Protestant denominations. And St. Ignatius lived from 1491 to 1556. So he was on the tail end of the Middle Ages. So these two books will be added to my later studies. And the final book that I got, I'm on a cookbook craze. I'm looking through a lot of them. I'm not buying a lot of them. I own several, but they're very specific. Mediterranean or blue zones or something along those lines. And I pull specific recipes. But I find myself wanting to know more about food and how adding this spice or that spice or what have you, how it affects the food. Why would you put it in there? And what combinations can you put with that, right? And I think it will help me to get a little more creative and confident when I'm cooking myself. I don't know what bug I got that suddenly got me interested in that, but I got it. And this is a book entitled Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. I've seen this for a long time, but I would always pass it by. And what I love about this one is for those of us who are very visual learners, such as myself, it covers really basic, what may be considered boring concepts, possibly. And they draw these awesome illustrations. And that's part of the reason why this book appealed to me. It covered the information that I wanted to learn about, but they did it in such an interesting way that it really catered to people like me who like sparkly things. So that's this cool book. It is by Samin Nosrat, and the art is by Wendy McNaughton, and there's a foreword by Michael Pollan. And this has won a couple of awards. So I'm pretty confident this is going to be a really helpful book. And the Book of Dust, the final book in the trilogy, The Rose Field. This is the slipcover. And I purchased the book at Waterstones, pre-ordered it, and it was shipped from the UK. And it's all very pretty and everything, but unfortunately, I have found a couple of defects in here that kind of upset me. If you look inside the bind, look at this. These are like stickers that were on the paper. If I take those stickers off, the typeface will be removed as well. So I have to leave them there. And I was sort of, there aren't any on any other pages that I can find, but that sort of disappointed me. And then a few pages down, there's a tear. And it kind of made me upset because this is a special book. I paid extra money for it. You just expect a little more careful production going on, and this obviously missed the mark. I can't sell it. I'm not sending it back. And in addition to that, I prefer paperbacks over hardbacks. And if I do get a special hardback like this one, where pretty books that cost extra money, I don't read them. I prefer to read the paperback because I can't relax reading a hardback. I'm not used to reading hardbacks, and if I'm sitting back, reading this, it's heavy. This is a heavier one. So I can't just let it rest in the palm of my hand as I'm reading. The weight of it. Eventually, I find myself needing to tuck a pillow under an arm, changing position. So that's what I've been experiencing while reading this book. And in the end, I gave up and just downloaded it onto my Kobo. So this is how I'm reading the book right now. It'd be nice if they would release a paperback at the same time, but I can figure for monetary reasons, maybe people would buy more of those than the hardbacks, which make more money. Um, yeah, I think what I'm going to do is all my other collection is paperbacks. So as soon as the paperback does come out, even if it is in the UK, doesn't have to be, I will order that and then I'll be able to complete my collection. And this is going to go in with my special books, but I can't do anything about those defects that I found in the book at this point, other than complain. It's just one of those, oh well, right? It happens. So that is it, people. I think I've shown you everything. I think I'm finally caught up after my 2-week absence. Don't forget to press the like and subscribe button. And if you want to be aware of, you want to learn of any new videos that are coming up, there's that little bell symbol there. Make sure you click onto that. And in the meantime, be brave, be safe, and I will see you in just a few days. Bye-bye.